I want you to do something for me, and I want you to do it right now. Open LinkedIn, go to your profile, and look at it honestly through the eyes of someone who has never met you before. It could be a potential employer, or it could be a research supervisor, or a senior professional who is deciding whether to respond to your outreach message or not, or someone who has 30 seconds and a pile of other profiles to look at. What do they see when they look at your profile? A profile photo that might be your graduation picture, or worse, no photo at all, or a headline that says simply medical graduate, or pharmacist, or recent graduate at University of Nairobi. A summary section that is either completely blank or 3 sentences that read like the opening of a cover letter from way back in 2015, or a sparse experience section, no posts at all, no activity, nothing that tells this person who you are, what you think, what you care about, or why they should pay attention to you. Now, if that description sounds familiar, if it sounds familiar, you are not alone. It describes the LinkedIn profile of the majority of healthcare professional graduates across Africa. Not because they are not impressive people, not because they have nothing to say, but because nobody ever told them what LinkedIn is actually for, or how to use it in a way that builds something real. Now that changes today. Welcome back to After Campus. This is episode 13. This is week 3. Yesterday in episode 12, we talked about how to approach senior professionals without feeling like a burden to them. Now, the principles of approach, the templates, the follow-up, we looked at all that, and I gave you one action step before you close the video to draft one message to one person you have been meaning to reach out to. If you did that, I want to hear from you in the comments today. If you haven't yet, today's episode gives you the perfect platform to do it. Because today we are talking about LinkedIn, the most underused professional tool in African healthcare. And I mean that with both parts of that sentence. Underused because most health professionals either don't have a profile or have one that is doing nothing for them. And professional tool because used correctly, LinkedIn is not a social media platform. It is not. It is a career infrastructure if used correctly. And building it properly right now during the pre-internship period or early in your career is one of the highest leverage things you can do for your professional future. And in this episode, we are building it. So let's build. And I want to tell you about 2 nurses as a way of beginning today's conversation. Same training institution, same qualification, same graduation year, same starting point in every measurable way. Let's call them Akinyi, and the other one we'll call her Celine. Now, Akinyi graduated and built her LinkedIn profile properly. Not immediately, no, it took her 3 weeks of deliberate effort to build her LinkedIn profile. And she uploaded a clean professional profile photo, and she wrote a headline that went beyond her job title. Not registered nurse, but registered nurse, passionate about maternal and child health, pre-intern building in public health. And she wrote a summary that told her professional story in 3 paragraphs. Who she was, what she cared about, where she was heading. She documented her education, her clinical rotations, her volunteer work, and the short courses she had completed in community health. And then she started posting. Not every day, once a week. Short reflections on things she was learning, a response to a piece of health news that intersected with the clinical training that she had undertaken. A question she was sitting with about nursing practice in low resource setting. Small posts, thoughtful posts that showed clearly and consistently that she was a person who thought seriously about her field. That was Akinyi. On the other side, we have Celine. Celine created her LinkedIn profile on the same day she graduated. She uploaded a photo, she listed her university and her degree. She connected with 12 classmates and then she closed the app and didn't open it again for 4 good months. Now, 8 months into the pre-internship period, a global health organization that is running a maternal health program in East Africa posted a call for a junior program associate at an entry level, perfect for a recently qualified nurse with a genuine interest in maternal health. The hiring manager, doing what hiring managers increasingly do, searched LinkedIn before the formal applications even closed. And she was looking for candidates who demonstrated genuine interest in the field, not just a degree. Evidence of thinking, of engagement, of showing up professionally. She found Akinyi. She read 3 of her posts. She looked at her profile. And before Akinyi had even submitted a formal application, the hiring manager had already mentally shortlisted her. And Celine also applied. She was equally qualified, equally capable, but she was invincible, not because she had nothing to say, but because she had never said it anywhere anyone could see. Same qualification, same talent, completely different visibility. And in a world where opportunities increasingly find people before people find opportunities, visibility is not vanity. It is strategy. That is visibility. It is strategy. And I want to start with a reframe that I think you should know, because the way most people think about LinkedIn is limiting them before they even begin. Most people think of LinkedIn as a digital CV, a place to list your qualifications and experience, something you update when you are job hunting and then ignore the rest of the time. That understanding is not wrong, but it captures about 20% of what LinkedIn actually is. 20%. The remaining 80% is left out. LinkedIn is 3 things simultaneously, and understanding all 3 changes how you use it. And I look at the 3 of them. First, it is a searchable professional database. Now, when a hiring manager, a research supervisor, a potential collaborator, or a senior professional wants to find out more about you or wants to find someone with a specific profile, LinkedIn is where they go. Which means your LinkedIn profile is not just something you look at. It is something other people find. And what they find or don't find shapes their first impression of you. Now, before you have said a single word, before they have read your CV, before any formal process has begun, your profile is doing work or failing to do work every single day. Now, whether you are paying attention to it or not. Secondly, it is a content platform. LinkedIn is a publishing platform. Now, where you can share ideas, reflections, analysis, questions, and stories, and where those ideas, if they are genuine and consistent, build you a professional reputation over time. Not a professional brand in the corporate influencer sense, a professional reputation. The slow accumulation of evidence that you are a person who thinks seriously about your field, who engages with the issues that matter, who has a point of view. LinkedIn gives you that platform, and who is worth paying attention to. Now, that reputation, build post by post over months, is one of the most valuable professional assets you can own. Thirdly, it is a relationship maintenance tool. Now, every person you meet professionally, at a forum, after a talk, through a mutual connection, is a relationship that can be maintained on LinkedIn. A follow, a comment, a shared article, a small low friction touch points that keep connections warm. Now, without requiring a separate email or a formal meeting with them. Now, LinkedIn is the infrastructure on which your professional network sits. And the stronger that infrastructure, the easier everything else we have talked about this week becomes. Now, let's build your profile, and we'll do that section by section. And I want to give you specific guidance on each one of them, not general advice, but specific. Now, section 1 is where we have the profile photo, and we look at that, what we need to do in that particular section. Now, this is the first thing anyone else sees when they come to your profile, and it matters more than most people actually think. Not because LinkedIn is superficial, but because a professional photo signals that you take your professional presence seriously. What makes a good LinkedIn photo for a health professional is a clear, well-lit face with natural light, or natural light will suffice. Professional or smart casual attire also will do. You do not need to be in a white coat. A genuine, approachable expression would work, not a formal stiff pose, a clean and cluttered background. These are what you should avoid. Group photos that are cropped awkwardly, or graduation photos where the gown is the main visual, selfies taken in a dim room, or photos where you are clearly dressed for a social event rather than a professional context. Your photo does not need to be taken by a professional photographer. It needs to be clear, to be warm, and to be professional, and that is all. You don't need to add any extras. Section 2 is where we have the headline, and this is the line that appears directly under your name, on search results, on comments you leave, on connection requests you send. It follows you everywhere on the platform, and the default, which LinkedIn fills in automatically with your most recent job title or student at this and this university, is almost always a wasted opportunity. Now, your headline should do 3 things. Tell people what you are, tell people what you care about, and tell people where you are headed. Examples of weak headlines include things like this: medical graduate or pharmacist, pre-intern, University of Nairobi. Examples of strong guidelines will sound like this: medical graduate, passionate about global health and health systems strengthening, building in public health. Or a pharmacist, clinical pharmacy and patient education, pre-intern, committed to evidence-based practice. Or a nursing graduate, maternal and child health advocate, exploring health policy and community nursing. Notice what the strong headlines do. They go beyond the title. They signal interest and direction, and they use language that makes the profile findable, because people searching for collaborators or candidates use terms like global health and health systems and patient education. And your headline is your first search engine optimization tool on this particular platform. Use it deliberately. Don't waste it. And this is your summary, and it is the section with the most room and the most opportunity. We are looking at the bio or the summary. Now, 3 to 4 paragraphs can make up your summary section, written in first person, not in the third person corporate voice that makes LinkedIn summaries feel like they were written by a press office. Your voice, your story, your thinking, that needs to go into that particular section. And structure it like this. Paragraph 1 could be who you are and what you've trained in. Paragraph 2, what you care about, the problem that interests you, the areas of healthcare you are most drawn to, what drove you into this field. And then paragraph 3, what you are currently doing and building, your pre-internship activities, your learning, your professional development. And paragraph 4 is what you are looking for, not desperately, but honestly. What kind of conversations, connections, and opportunities you are open to. And end with a call to action, which should be very simple, a call to action that is very simple. And it could be like this: if you are working in so and so area, and if you share an interest in this topic, I would love to connect with you. That one line at the end of a genuine, well-written summary has opened more conversations for health professionals than almost any other profile element, because it gives people permission to reach out. And people who want to connect but are not sure they should need that permission. When they see it, they'll do that. They'll reach out. Document everything we talked about in episode 9. That is another thing that you need to do, to document everything we talked about in episode 9. Clinical rotations with brief descriptions of volunteer roles with specific bullet points, research contributions with clear attribution, certifications and short courses listed clearly with dates, leadership and extracurricular roles documented properly. Do not leave these sections sparse because you feel your experience is limited. A well-documented pre-internship period with volunteer work, short courses, research and community engagement, it tells a far more interesting story than a blank page. And story is what this platform runs on. And a minimum of 10 skills should also be included in your profile. Mix clinical skills specific to your training with professional skills like communication, research, data analysis, patient education, public health, health promotion. Connect with peers and colleagues and ask for endorsements on your top skills. This section contributes on how LinkedIn's algorithm surfaces your profile in searches. And the more specific and relevant your skills, the more likely the right person is to find you. And this is one of the most underused sections on LinkedIn that I would like to talk about next. The featured section, which sits near the top of your profile, below your headline and photo, above your experience. And it lets you pin specific content. A post you're particularly proud of, an article you wrote, a certificate you completed, a presentation you gave, a project you contributed to. And in this section, put your best, most representative work here, because this is what a profile visitor sees before they scroll down into your full experience. And as you do that, make it count. Make it count. Here's the question I get most often about LinkedIn. What do I post? And underneath that question, I don't know enough to share things publicly, or I'm just a student who will listen to me, or what if I say something wrong? I want to address all of those fears because they are all versions of the same mistake. The belief that you need to be an expert before you can contribute to a professional conversation. You do not need to be an expert. I'll repeat that again. You do not need to be an expert. You need to be genuine. There is an enormous difference. Experts share conclusions. Learners share the process. Experts share the conclusion, learners share the process. And on LinkedIn, which is populated with experts sharing conclusions, the genuine voice of a serious, curious, developing professional is refreshing, is relatable, and is read. So something you learned this week in your revision, in your volunteer role, in a book or paper that you read, not a lecture, a reflection. I've been revising hypertension guidelines this week, and something struck me about the gap between the recommendations and what I actually observed during my clinical rotation. Here is what I've been thinking about. That post requires no expertise. It requires honesty, and it will resonate with every other health professional who has noticed the same gap. Now, something happening in healthcare locally or globally, that intersects with your training. It could be a new drug approval that has come through, a public health challenge in Kenya or Africa, a policy challenge in the health sector, a piece of research that surprised you. You do not need to have all the answers. You just need to engage thoughtfully. Now, the recent reports on antibiotic resistance in East Africa is something I've been thinking about since my pharmacology training. Here is my perspective as a recent graduate. It could be something like that. That sentence and what follows it positions you as someone who connects their clinical knowledge to the real world, which is exactly the kind of person that organizations building in health want to work with. Now, the pre-internship period is, we've talked about it in the last couple of episodes, the experience of being health professional graduate, navigating an uncertain system, the things you are learning about your field, about yourself, about what you want your career to become. Now, these stories are valuable precisely because they are honest, because they speak to thousands of other graduates in exactly the same position, and because they build a human connection with your audience, which is the foundation of every professional relationship that LinkedIn can eventually produce. The simplest, most underrated content on LinkedIn can be linked to your pre-internship experience. Now, a genuine question addressed to your network could be like this. For those of you working in global health, what was the one piece of advice you wish you had had at the start of your career in exploring this space? And I would love to learn from your experience. Now, this is a question you can post on LinkedIn. Questions invite responses. Responses start conversations. Conversations build relationships. And relationships, as we established on the episode we did on Monday, are how this whole ecosystem works. How often should you post on LinkedIn? Once a week is enough. Twice a week is excellent. Now, daily posting, unless it comes naturally and genuinely, tends to produce content that is thinner and less impactful. Consistency over frequency should be your goal. One thoughtful post per week for a year is worth more than 30 posts in 1 month, followed by silence. And this is what not to post on LinkedIn. Political content unrelated to health. Personal life content that has no professional relevance. Do not post them on LinkedIn. Complaints about the system without any constructive engagement. Copied content without attribution. Generic motivational quotes with no personal connection. And most importantly, never post anything about specific patients, clinical incidents, or workplace dynamics. Never post anything specific about that, not even anonymized. Professional discretion is non-negotiable, and one lapse of judgment on a public platform can cost you far more than any post was worth. And here is something that almost nobody talks about when they teach LinkedIn strategy. The most powerful thing you can do on LinkedIn is not posting. That is not the most powerful thing. It is engaging, commenting, responding, showing up in other people's conversations. Comment on posts, not empty comments, not those comments that read like great post, not a single emoji, but a genuine substantive response to something that your connect said. An addition to their argument, a question their post raised for you, a personal connection to their point. Now, when you leave a thoughtful comment on someone's post, their entire network sees it, including people who don't know you yet. They see those thoughtful comments, and a good comment, specific, intelligent, genuine, does more for your professional visibility than most posts you could write. Does more because it positions you as someone worth listening to in a context where someone else's credibility is already established. Now, share content with your own perspective added as you do your posts. When you share someone else's post or article you reshare, don't just reshare it. Add 2 or 3 sentences of your own thinking. This article on health worker migration from Sub-Saharan Africa raised something I've been sitting with since my training. The systemic issues described are ones I saw reflected in my own clinical environment. I'm sharing it because I think more of us should be part of this conversation. Now, sharing with perspective is content creation. Sharing without it is just noise. Now, connect intentionally, not indiscriminately when you are building your connections. LinkedIn will suggest connections endlessly, and it is tempting to connect with everyone that shows up. But a network of 500 people you have no relationship with is not a network, it is a list. Connect deliberately. People you have met, people whose work genuinely interests you, people you have engaged with meaningfully in the comments. Connect deliberately. And when you send a connection request, always add a personal note, a sentence or two explaining why you want to connect with them. That note is the difference between a connection request that feels like a spam and one that feels like the beginning of a real relationship that is being built or beginning to be built on LinkedIn. And I want to be honest about how I started on LinkedIn. I did not begin with a strategy when I began on LinkedIn. I did not sit down and plan a content calendar. I didn't do that. I began because someone I respected told me that I was leaving visibility on the table by being invincible on the platform. And that phrase stuck. Leaving visibility on the table. Now, my first post was terrible. Terrible, if I'm telling you. I'm not being falsely modest. It was generic and overly formal and read like a press release about myself. And I know you could be relating with this, or already you've written your first post and it sounds like that. Nobody commented, almost nobody read it, and I nearly decided that LinkedIn was not for me. But I kept going. I kept moving, not because I had a plan, but because I made one rule for myself. Post one honest thing per week. Not impressive, not polished, honest. And slowly, over weeks, then months, something started to happen. Over weeks and then months, something started to happen. People started engaging with my content. Not thousands of people, but a handful, but the right handful. People who are genuinely interested in the same things I was interested in. People who would eventually become collaborators, connections, and in some cases, even friends. I've made friends off LinkedIn. LinkedIn did not change my career overnight. I have to be honest with you. It changed it slowly, one genuine post at a time. One thoughtful comment at a time, one deliberate connection at a time, and the compound effect of that consistency over months and years is a professional visibility and a network that I could not have built any other way. It is available to you starting today. You just have to take the first step. You just have to begin. Now, that is episode 13 of After Campus. Before you go, your action step for today is specific and it has 3 parts. Your action has 3 parts that I would like to share. Part 1 is to update one section of your LinkedIn profile today. Just one part, the headline, the about section or the profile photo. You pick the one that needs the most work and do it today from the 3. Not this week, but today. That is part 1 of the action step. Part 2, leave one genuine substantive comment on a post that from someone in your field. Not those generic comments that read great post. This is insightful. Not those generic comments, but a real comment, something that adds to the conversation, something that you've given a thought to, something that shows you actually read and engaged with that or with what they wrote. Part 3, drop your LinkedIn profile link in the comments below. Now, let's build a community here. Let's follow each other, support each other's content, engage with each other's idea, because the After Campus community, the people in this comment section, are exactly the kind of network I described in episode 11. Peers who show up, who are building at the same time, who will be resources for each other for years to come. Now, let's be that for each other. Drop the link below. Drop your link in the comment section. Now, tomorrow will be in episode 14. And in episode 14, we are moving from visibility to actually opportunity, specifically where the jobs and opportunities actually are, beyond the government portal, beyond the obvious postings, the fellowships, the NGO roles, the research positions, the industry openings. We are moving towards that direction that most graduates never find because they don't know where to look. That episode drops tomorrow, episode 14, and I will see you then. This is Dr. Libea Bethwell, and this is After Campus series.